20 years ago, in March 2004, a new blog appeared on the internet for the very first time. It was called Hirhurim and has since been rebranded as Torah Musings, and it has grown to be a major hub for Torah on the internet. It strikes a balance between sophisticated and popular, intellectually open and halachically conservative. The man behind this movement is a rabbi who has written hundreds of articles, published 5 books, and has been involved in numerous communal initiatives. Oh, and he's an actuary who learns, writes, and teaches in his spare time. His name is Rav Gil Student, and in our conversation, he shares his unique take on working, learning, and more. If he sounds like an intense person, well, you're sort of right. In our interview, he talks about laid-back intensity, his own version of the rat race, and why his corner of the office is always the loudest. My name is Yaakov Wolf, and this is Start Pink. Shalom Aleichem, Gil Student. It's a great honor to have you here. I think you're the first person to be a guest both on my podcast and at my bris. So welcome to the show and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's such I literally haven't seen you since your bris. So it's for the listeners who don't know, I was very close with Yaakov's father, Josh. His grandparents opened a home to me. I spent a lot of time there. His great grandmother, I used to eat Shabbos meals by her. I don't. What's coming next for the next half hour or so is going to be me talking about myself, and I really, really don't feel comfortable doing it. I probably wouldn't have done it for anyone else, but for your family, I can't say no.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, I've been hearing about you a lot since I was a very little kid, and I always heard about you in the context of being a scholar and a Talmid Chacham. So I was actually very surprised to hear that you make a parnasa not as a Rav, not as a Klei Kodesh full-time. So maybe just to frame the conversation about your learning and teaching, you tell us a little bit about what you do professionally and how you chose that path.
Okay. So the first thing you have to understand is that nothing in my life makes sense. I've never had a plan for anything, and everything just falls into place because of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Some of the stuff I'm going to tell you are like Parvash Nisan Deluim that happened in my life. So to move back, okay, so I'll say I was in high school. I became from in high school. I'd gone to Summit Chester. I was at Fresh, which is a modern Orthodox high school. And after 10th grade, going into 11th grade, I became from. And Shem Shabbos, strict on everything. Extremely strict on everything. So my parents wanted me to go to whatever secular college, and I had no interest whatsoever. If I could tell you a story that you might be able to relate to, Yaakov, I went to a family bar mitzvah in Brookline when I was in 12th grade, and it was at the time when my parents wanted me to go to. So my parents reached out to get a lot of college applications, but I got home before they got home, so I threw them all in the garbage because I only wanted to apply to YU. But I missed one. Columbia engineering application came in. My parents got it. I don't know how it slipped through. And I applied and I tried to get rejected, but I actually somehow got accepted to Columbia engineering, and I had no interest in going. And there was an ongoing argument between me and my parents. And we're at Brooklyn for Shabbos. And my father went with me to shul. My father's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person. Great college. He went with me to Mincha. And in between Mincha and Nari, there was a scholar residence at the Young Israel of Brooklyn. A young Talmid from the YU's Kolel Elyon named Rabbi Baruch Simon. Now, many people know of. And he gave a knockout shear between Mincha and Maariv on Hilchos Mikvos. And after Shabbos, I told my father, if I want to be anything like him, I can't go to Columbia. I have to go to YU. And my recollection is that was the end of the story, and I went to YU. And so I was in YU, and I really had no interest in college. I started off in the same program that your father was in a joint engineering program between YU and Columbia. But the physics classes in YU were 3 hours long. Brutal. I couldn't sit still for that long. I needed to find another major. And I was good at math. So one of my friends, David Comet, now a Rebbe, a high school Rebbe, so he said, why don't you major in math? It's an easy for you, and attendance is not required in class. That was the YU policy. If you're in math classes, attendance was required. At that point, I had almost an out-of-body experience. That was the jackpot. You could get a college degree and not have to go to class. You just have to take tests. So I majored in math, and I had no idea what I was going to do with it. But I asked around, what do you do with a major in math? And someone said, you could be an actuary. I said, okay, I'll be an actuary. That was it.
And can you tell us about your transition from college to the workforce?
So we got married like right after college. I was 22. It was the day before my 22nd birthday. I got married. She was still in college. My parents had no interest of me learning in Colo. My in-laws had no interest of me learning in Colo. So we skated along for a year. And then at some point, my wife said, shouldn't you be interviewing for a job? Okay, I'll interview for a job. So I sent out a bunch of resumes, interviewed. I got the worst job in the actuarial industry, but I got my foot in the door. Um, so I started as a property casualty actuary. Um, Hated the job immediately. Terrible, terrible job. Great people, love the people. Hated the job. I lasted maybe 9 months, but the way I got out of it is a very important lesson. I don't. A few months ago, I was walking in Brooklyn and I bumped into an Avrat in a Colo in San Berlin, and he just said, "What are you learning?" And he asked me, "How do you remember? What's your strategy to remember the Gemara that you learn? How do you keep it in your head?" And I told him, "My strategy is brute force. Just keep learning, chazer, 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 and that's my strategy in life." So when it came to finding another job, this was before the internet. We're talking 1996. Maybe that wasn't it, but I wasn't online. But in my company, it had a big book with a list of every insurance company in the country. So I took that big book. I went through every insurance company that looked like they had a headquarters in New York, and I sent them a resume and a cover letter, and I called them up. And through brute force, I got a few interviews, and I got 2 really, really good job offers. And they told me after I started my next job, which was a great place to work, they said the reason they hired me was because they were impressed by the effort that I put in. So I got a job as an actuary, and to be an actuary, you don't need any graduate school. I had no graduate degrees whatsoever. I don't even have SMIFA from YU or any institution. But you have to take actuarial exams. So I had a great job at working as an actuary, pricing business, reserving, it was really fancy stuff. It was the mid-90s when finance and insurance was overlapping, and I was doing all sorts of really cool stuff. But I had 3 kids by then, couldn't take exams and learn. I the way I have it with my wife, the version we've had for the past 30 years, she's the one at home. She takes care of the kids. My job is to earn a living. My work always comes first. And then after that comes my family and my learning. So I was never there. I missed lots of things for my kids. Because when I had to work, I had to work. But for me, I needed time to learn. I needed time to be with my family. I couldn't just be studying for these exams. And you're competing, it's graded on a curve. So you're competing with other people who are young, who have no families, who don't have Shabbos, don't have Yom Tov. And it's very hard to compete. So I said, who needs this? Why do I need to take exams? I could be working in finance, making more money, working fewer hours. So I got out of there and I called the head out there and I got a job in credit cards. I was working at Citibank credit cards, which at that time I think was the biggest credit card company in the country, if not the world. And it was a cash cow. They were earning money, tons of money, no matter what they did. But it's a huge company. I felt like Dilbert there. It's terrible. And I really hated my job. I hated going to work every day. And I never really have career aspirations. I don't enjoy the work, but you got to get some sipuk hanefesh. I know I'm not saving lives here, but I just can't be bored all day. You go out of your mind. Only thing that I had was email lists. So I was on these email lists, Torah email lists, sending emails, it was horrible. So I called up a recruiter and said, can you get me, I called an actuarial recruiter, Pauline Reimer. She's from, I said, can you get me something? And she looked. And then after a while, she said she found an industry, a company that's looking for someone with an actuarial background and a credit background. I said, oh, I used to be an actuary. I work in credit. Perfect. And I stumbled into this niche industry in finance, and that merges finance and insurance. And I started working there, and it was great stuff. So basically, I'm crunching numbers. I'm back office. I'm not doing any sales. I'm not meeting with any customers. I don't really have. They know me. They realize I don't have the kind of personality to deal with outside parties too much. A little bit, not too much. I'm not a schmoozer. I'm a quiet guy. But I had a career there, and then came the financial crisis, which hit specifically my industry, destroyed my career. The 2008, really started 2007, 2008. I was in the center of all that crisis. I was part of it. I watched it happen, destroyed every company in my industry except for one. And everybody got laid off. I was called into the cafeteria where the CEO addressed one third of the company and said, "You're all fired, all laid off." And I was kept on I mean, I can tell you stories. There's a lot of hashgacha practice in here, how I was saved from all of that. And it went on. Eventually they laid me off, but they hired me back as a consultant and they kept renewing it and renewing it.
That probably didn't last forever. So what was the next step?
Finally, the day before my last day on that job, I got a call from Rabbi Menachem Genak of the OU. He left me a voicemail. I'm like, I don't have time to do it. I'm about to be unemployed. I got 4 kids at that point. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. I have no source of income whatsoever. I can't. He called me again, left me another voicemail. So I called him back. He said they're starting a publishing. They started publishing at the OU, and they want to talk to me about it. And basically, he was offering me a job. I went into the OU the next week, and they offered me a job to be an editor, editing Sfarim. This is my dream job. This is what I've always wanted to do at the OU. It's mamash gan eden. But they didn't pay the salary that I needed to support a family. So I worked there for 2 years at a severance package. And then at the end of 2 years, mamish, literally 2 years later, I come to the office. Today is the day I have to look for a new job. I Google something, reach out to a recruiter who I know, said, I want this job at my level. And he said, Gil, the hiring manager of that job you used to work with, just call him up. I called him up, went up to coffee that day. By the end of the day, he said, Gil, you have a job. And I got hired at AIG, which at the time was one of the biggest insurance companies in the world. And I was doing basically my stuff, I do financial projections. I do capital modeling and capital projections in insurance. And I ended up being there for 8 years. I learned an incredible amount from that company, as it is a jungle. They consider themselves, or they used to consider themselves, sort of like an investment bank. Everybody's out for themselves, survival of the fittest, stab everybody in the back whenever you can. My back is wounded. I have so many knives in my back, but it taught me to think strategically, because you want to position yourself so you can't get stabbed in the back, and you got to think 3-4 steps ahead, so that you'll come out without being destroyed. And that taught me an important lesson. But my general strategy in the office is I don't really care. I'm just there to do a job. I tend to be an intense person. So I do what I need to do. I tend to do it pretty quickly and then hopefully pretty well. But I don't enjoy it. I'm not competing with anybody. I have no career aspirations. I just want to make enough money so I can pay my bills, maybe shoot tuition. And that's it. But somehow, Baruch Hashem, my youngest is in 12th grade and we just about made it through the yeshiva system. It's been brutal. But my philosophy in the office is do your job, do it well, and just try to make friends. I'm not a friendly person. I'm a quiet person, but I try to help other people. Someone needs another job, needs a reference, or if they need something quickly turned around, I'll turn around for them quickly. I'll do them a favor. I just want to do people favors. So one thing I'm not good at the underhanded way of survival. So I'd rather survive because people like me. And if they have to choose who to lay off, hopefully they won't choose the guy who helps them out. So I survived 8 years in AIG that way. And then also doing chesed for people, Jewish, Gentile, it doesn't matter. You help people out, they'll help you back. When you need a job, when you need a switch, a transfer, or anything like that, you help them, they'll help you out. People remember, people are good. And even if you didn't help them out, you helped out their friend. It's good. There's they call it a chesed boomerang. It's absolutely true. And that's basically how I've survived in my career. And then after 8 years at that, and I was, and let me tell you, at AIG, at certain points in my career, the average time I left work was 9 p.m. And I was working 12 hours on a boring day. And when it got intense, I was there till 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. And through all that, people don't know this, I was blogging the whole time. I was writing, I was publishing in newspapers and magazines the whole time. We could talk about how I did that. The smoke and mirrors around my life. But after 8 years, I got an email from that one company in that industry that I was in before the financial crisis. The guy who had my equivalent to the job said, I just got promoted. Do you know anyone who wants my old job? Then I'll take it. I'll take it. Told her what I wanted in terms of salary. I mean, it's just Baruch Hashem. It's just unbelievable that happened. And that's I've been there almost 5 years, working for one of my old friends, old comrades, working in this old industry where everybody knows each other. People I've known for 20 plus years. I suddenly got reacquainted with them. Nice, quiet company. Baruch Hashem is somehow it all worked out. But to my point, I never had any career aspirations. I didn't want to be a CE anything, CEO. I wanted to manage as few people as possible. At some point, I reached a point in my career where I was managing people, only because they forced me to do it. I was actually pretty good at it, but it's exhausting to manage people, especially millennials. I mean, no offense, but like 50% of my time was spent counseling people when their problems, want this and that, and wonderful people. I like them. I love them. They're good people. I try to help them out as much as I can, but it's exhausting. I just want to be an individual contributor. Put me in front of a spreadsheet. I could do wonderful things for you. And I don't want to be thinking about it on the weekends. Sometimes I had to work on the weekends and work through Shabbos. And, I never compromised on one iota of halacha. And they respect that. And they know that. If I put that forward at the beginning and you're consistent, they respect that and they work around you. At least in my experience, that's what I've done. I've always worn a yarmulke. I know lots of people, they go to mincha, they put on the yarmulke, and I don't judge them for that. But I don't want to spend 12 hours a day uncomfortable. That's just not how I want to live my life. So you can see me, I have a beard. At some point, my beard was even bigger. Nobody cares. I published Svarim. I usually don't tell people about it, but they tend to figure it out. There's a Wikipedia page for me, so people Google me, they find that. And they realize I'm the rabbi, and actually people come to me for counseling. And in the office, I have Catholics, Protestants who come to me with their own spiritual questions. I try to help them in any way that I can. So that's where
That's
I am
really
now.
incredible. Wow. So I have a whole bunch of follow-up questions, but I'll start with this. When I reached out to you for this interview, you responded, and I'll quote here, "I'm happy to participate, although I'm not particularly successful in my career." So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that the fact that you don't see anything and the fact that you might not be the wealthiest guy in the world, is that what you meant by "I'm not particularly successful in my career"?
Yeah, no, I make enough. My goal. So first of all, I've exceeded everyone's expectations, including my parents, including my own. I thought I would not be able to make ends meet. And especially given my attitude and given I tell everyone, just about everyone I know, I have no career aspirations. Please don't promote me. Somehow they keep promoting me. And I make enough to pay all my bills. I've always paid full tuition, which makes me a sucker. I've always paid full tuition. And I have enough to pay my bills and to have a cushion. You always need a cushion for a rainy day. So Baruch Hashem, I have a cushion. And I can't complain. I live a simple life. I don't do vacations, fancy vacations. We've never done anything fancy. Only one of my children went to Eretz Yisrael for the year. It's very expensive. My boys never wanted to go. Baruch Hashem, I didn't have to pay for that. And really, my only goal in parenting, and I think I said before, and I'll go into this more when we talk about learning. There's more in Eruvin that says, who do you see Torah with? Someone who's cruel to their children like a raven. I need to take it literally. You're going to be a horrible person. You can't be cruel to your children. But I wasn't there. I was there for a lot of their lives. I was usually in the office. And, I can rearrange my learning schedule to be with them. But even learning, I go to the base medrash at night, or I do this or that. And I'm constantly busy with things. I'm constantly, writing. And when we go places, sometimes people recognize me and want to talk to me and make them embarrass my kids, embarrass me. I just want to be left alone. That's my goal in life. So, I wasn't such a good parent. And my only goal, though, was the minute my wife becomes pregnant. If you wait till your wife gives birth, you're late. The minute you find out your wife is pregnant, you need to start doubting that your kids will be firm and live a Torah life. And then, you cry, you daven. To me, that's the most important thing with my kids. Every decision we've made in life has to do with how will it affect our kids so that they will end up being from. They don't have to be like me. It could be the right, the left. I don't care. And they all tend to be to the right of me, which is fine. That's been my main concern throughout is if I'm a bad father, will my kids still come out from. And Baruch Hashem, my wife is a good mother, so it worked out well.
You made reference to these smoke and mirrors around your achievements in Torah, so I want to start getting into that a little more. So I think just a good way to start would be maybe I'm sure things have changed over the years, but as things go now, what's your daily or weekly learning regimen looking like?
Okay, I'll tell you what it is, but you should just keep in mind I'm older than you. My kids are all gone. My grandchildren don't live anywhere near me. Um, my goal is to learn 25 blot a week. I always never reach that goal. One of my strategies in life is have goals that push you. I need to be pushed, and my work is not that hard. Amal Torah. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says Amal Torah. It's the learning, and you need to struggle. You need to push yourself. And I'm not the smartest. I've never been the smartest guy in the room. I know that. Smart, probably above average. Everybody thinks they're above average. So hopefully I'm above average, but I'm certainly not brilliant. I would really always wish I could have been brilliant, but I'm not. But you got to push yourself. You got to push yourself because none of us is an amazing the Hagdama to the Mabiv's Beis Elokim. The Mabib lived in the 1500s in Sas, or Ashkafa Sefer Beis Elokim, an introduction. He points out, and this is something that a constant line you hear all the time, that anyone can be a gadol if they just work hard enough. Anyone can be a gadol b'Torah. That's clearly not true because some people are below average intelligence. Some people are above average intelligence. To be a gadol b'Torah, you have to be brilliant. We might make joke about people not in our community, but whatever. A gadol b'Torah is by definition brilliant. Some people just are not that smart. So the Mabid says, and the Mabid says this. He says everybody has, and it's a Gemara. It's a Gemara Nida that everyone in the Tipa, when everyone is conceived and when they're born, Hashem already determines who's going to be Chacham and who's not going to be Chacham. But it's really just to be a tzaddik or a Rasha. That's up to us. Everything else is predetermined. We're not all going to be a Chacham. But it says in Mabid, but how do you know what you are going to be? How do you know what your potential is? Everyone has different potential. One person, if he fulfills his potential, he has a higher place in Shemaim than someone else who seems to be learning a lot more and know a lot more, but doesn't fulfill his potential. He says that's what it means when the Gemara says, in Shemaim, Elyonim, Taftonim, and Taftonim Elyonim. The people in this world are up on top, and Shemaim are in the bottom. People in this world are the bottom, and Shemaim are on the top. He's talking about people who accomplish in learning. Someone who seems like they accomplished so much in learning, when they go to Shemaim, you realize he didn't even fulfill his potential. He was supposed to be a Chacham. And he was a Chacham, but it wasn't as big a Chacham as it should have been. But says in my bit, how do you know what your potential is? You don't. The only thing you could do is push yourself as hard as possible and then push yourself more. And that's the only way you'll know that you've at least come close to fulfilling your potential. So that's what I do. I push myself as hard as I can, and then I push myself a little more. So I try to learn in Bikiyas 25 blot a week, which I almost never do. But I usually get to 21. And see, the reason I pick 25 is if you learn 25 blot a week, you finish Shas in 2 years. If you do 21 blot a week, so then you're going 3 times as fast as Daf Yomi, so you'll finish Shas 3 times in every Daf Yomi cycle. And that's just Bikiyas. I mean, all you do is you learn Bikiyas, you'll have a superficial understanding of everything, and you'll be a superficial person. So I also choose sugyas, and I have to write an article. I have to write at least 1,000 words every week on a sugya. Usually halacha, sometimes hashkafa. And so every week I'm also, researching some sort of topic, going from the beginning to the end, from Chazal all the way to the Achronim. And I have my own method. Some people like to go backwards. They look at a Sifsei Eliezer or Rabbi Omer and they go backwards. Some people start from the beginning. I usually start in the middle. I go to a late Rishon and early Achron, and then when I find that topic that I'm interested in, then I go bottom, go there bottom and there top, and I just research it from beginning to end. And that way I have a little Ian as well. Try to make it a little lumdish as well. And you just do that every week. And plus I always get random questions that people come to me on the street or emails that people just ask me weird questions. And I love it because it forces me to learn something else. Why do Rabbanim know halacha so well? It's not because they learned it in yeshiva or they learned a smicha program. It's because they keep getting asked those questions time and again. And that's what they remember. So when people ask me questions, they help me chazer or learn something new. And then I'll remember it from that occurrence, that time. So what I'm trying to say is my life is crazy. I'm like one of those rats running on those treadmills, trying to keep up with my learning. And I also try to learn Shulchan Aruch, at least once a year or twice a year. And that's also a constant race. Plus, I have a deadline. I have to write an article every week. And I also have to write an extra one every month and an extra one every quarter. because I write I have a monthly column, a weekly column, monthly column, and quarterly column, and that keeps me constantly busy.
And hearing you talk about your goals, you sound like a Shana Aleph guy, which is not a bad thing, but it's not normative of someone at your stage. So can you talk a little about your motivation and your drive? And is it something what you naturally always have or something what you actively cultivate?
So let's go back to my earlier story. So I'm about tshuva. I got out of I was in YU for 4 years, and then Kolo for fifth year. And then at the age of still 22, I went out into the workforce, and all my friends stayed in yeshiva, stayed in Kolo. And I just suffer from an incredible insecurity that I don't have that background. I have no graduate degrees. I have no advanced smicha. I mean, I eventually got personal smicha that respectable later in life, but I mean, I just don't have the background, and then once I got out of work, once I got out of yeshiva, and I was able to look at the holes in my education, and I realized I had never learned Tanakh cover to cover. I had never learned Mishnayos cover to cover. I never learned Shas. I never learned Moreh Nevuchim. I never learned the Monothedeus. I never learned Chazari. I felt like a complete moron, complete ignoramus. And so I just had to catch up. All these things, all these basic fundamental knowledge that I was lacking, I just felt I needed to learn it all. And then when my friends were learning Yeridea, I'm like, I don't even know Hilchos Kashrus. So I learned the Yeridea. And then, there was a shir, and the Rav of my shul gave me shir. And I generally tend to associate, at least when I was younger, not so much now, but when I was younger, I used to hang out in kollel circles. So I was living in Flatbush, and I would daven in shuls where most of the people there were learning in kollel, were young kollel guys. So I just constantly felt insecure, and that's been driving me my whole life. And hopefully someday I'll feel like I actually know something. But right now, I just feel like I'm playing catch up. I'm playing catch up for the rest of my life, and so that's what's driving me to constantly learn. And I don't always remember the stuff that I've learned, and I have a bad memory, and so my strategy is brute force, just keep fathering and fathering and fathering, and eventually someday I'll remember it.
And how do these goals play themselves out on a day-to-day level? How do you manage your time to get all that done?
Honestly, I really don't believe in time management. We'll all go to Shemayim, we'll have to ask the question, Kavata Itin Latorah. But, that's the minimum. Yeah, that's, so okay, so I'm hesitant maybe it'll help someone. So I'll tell you the details of my personal schedule. So I wake up early in the morning. I'm an early riser. I used to wake up when my kids were little. I'd wake up before them so I could learn. And I continue just to wake up early every day of the week, including Shabbat, Sunday. I learn a blot before work. I learn a blot after work. And then in the nighttime, I learn 2 blot, usually one before Marav, one after Marav, depending on the time of the year. So that's 4 blot a day, 5 days a week. That's 20 blot. Friday is for Parsha, for catching up. Shabbos is for, Ian, and also catching up. And I try to do one more blot on Shabbos. So that's 21. And, if you learn 25 blot a week, so 2 years you finish Shas. If you learn 21 blot a week, so you're at least going 3 times the speed of Daf you'll cover a lot of ground and continually chazer. And in addition to that, I try, or I hope to someday, learn 35 simanim of Shulchan Aruch a week, obviously very quickly. I'm way behind. I can't do that. I need to reevaluate them and tweak my actual goals. But if you do 35 a week, you'll finish all Shulchan Aruch in 1 year. If you do half of that, you'll finish all Shulchan Aruch in 2 years. So I'm trying to figure that out. How to do that schedule. Carry around with me a Gemara almost everywhere I go. And of course, I have a smartphone. And I should mention a new app that I'm involved with called Torah app, one word with no space. And that gives you a whole library of Svarim, Hebrew, English, Shiurim, audio and video Shiurim. So it's like a whole yeshiva you carry around with you. So you can learn anywhere you want. At a chasana, at the chuppah, you take out I don't want to be that guy who carries a sefer with me to a chasana, but you take out your phone. You can learn. Find minutes in a day. Small moments add up to large moments. You can accomplish them in davening. So if I finish Pesach Zimra before the Shal Tzibur, I have a Gemara there. So I open up the Gemara. In between Aliyahs, there's always little moments add up to a lot. But the idea that you'll only learn during specific times, kavata eating la Torah or time management is not the way I think of it. I set goals and I just pile on as much as possible. And I do, and I try to accomplish as much as possible. And when it becomes too much, then I reevaluate and change my goals. Um, Kaviyas eating Torah to me is like a bare minimum. And, we don't say Birkas Torah every time we learn during the day. When I said Tosaf tells us the Taz, Lasok B'divrei Torah is all day. And there's no hefsek, there's no break in between. All day, you're looking for time to learn. And your things that you're doing and the way you're thinking is also learning. Learning is a 24-hour or 18-hour, whatever, however much you sleep, whenever you're awake. There are moments where it's at least a potential for you to learn. So, and then same with the Sarcha Sibor. If I'm involved with this project or that project, I don't really plan out how much time it'll take, how much time do I have in a week. I just say yes, and I accept more and more, and eventually either I collapse or I fail, and I have to go back down a little and say no or figure something out. But I don't really actively manage my time. I just take on as much as possible and see what I can do. But all this sounds, again, it sounds too intense, and everybody wastes time. I'm certainly not perfect. I waste plenty of time. I'm not spending it. I'm not Reb Chaim Kanievsky. I don't try to be like him. That would drive me crazy. You need some breathing room in the day. You need to relax. You need to blow off some steam. You need to joke around. You need to smile. But when you have concrete goals and you have projects that you have to do, you end up wasting less time. And that's really all we could try to do. We could aspire to waste less time. And that way we use our time, better, more wisely. But everybody had to have different interests. You have to be curious about the world, but within reason. You have to have a hobby or something like that. Make Torah your hobby. Torah is really my hobby. But, you got to be human. We're all human. There's nothing wrong with listening to a podcast or reading a blog or a newspaper here and there, and hopefully when you read it generously, but, critically, and you ask questions, you're a cautious consumer, like we said, but, everything within reason. Torah matahel lessa. In the end, you have goals and deadlines that you need to meet, and that helps you manage your time however you figure out to do that. I just want to take a step back also and say, there's nothing wrong with being a Balabus, nothing wrong with being Balabatish. Everyone has different aspirations and different abilities. I respect the Bahlabus who sets aside time every day to go to a Daf Yomi shir or whatever shir it is. He's doing what he's supposed to do. You should go after him. It's just not who I am. That's not my aspirations in my life. So I don't structure my day and my life that way. Good for him and good for me. There's plenty of room for many different people in Klal Yisrael.
Please.
Can I just tell you the best piece of advice I ever got?
Please.
There's a Rebbe in YU and Rav Gil Student. He's the Baal there. So when I got engaged, I was about to get married, I told him I was going to live in Brooklyn and commute to YU uptown, which is an hour and a half by train. Or you could get a ride, which is only an hour. And he told me, always take the subway. Always take the subway. Because if you're driving, you have to pay attention to the road. If you're getting a ride, you have to talk to the driver. If you're on a subway, you can learn. I finished so many masechtas on a subway because of him. Some people go on the subway, they sleep, they talk, they check on their phone. But because of him, for almost 30 years, I'm learning on the subway so much, all thanks to that advice.
Let's transition to Torah Musings, which is your website, which we're actually coming up on a big milestone, 20 years of Torah Musings. So let's start with the story of how that started, and then we'll talk a little bit about what it's become.
Yeah, Torah Musings, like everything else in my life, was a complete accident. There was this early 2000s, there was this new thing called a blog, and I was just checking it out at some point, and I saw there was this halacha blog that was arguing on some point in halacha, which I thought was completely wrong. It was someone from the conservative movement who had a revisionist view of, and I have strong opinions on various topics, and I was just saying controversial stuff that really annoyed people or really got people riled up, and I just realized this is working. I might as well continue. And so I just kept writing, and all of the thoughts that were in my head, I just kept putting on paper. And then I ran out of thoughts. So I just started writing Divrei Torah and writing up sugyas and halacha and in lamdas and in Jewish history and hashkava, whatever it was. And it just, somehow I was at the right place at the right time. And people liked what I had to say. And it just snowballed. It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And at some point, I was invited to write in a newspaper. I said, "Oh, cool. One of those guys who writes in the newspaper. I'll get my name in. My mother-in-law will be very proud." So I wrote in the newspaper, and I got very good feedback. So I just kept doing it. I mean, really, I've been doing it for 20 years only because I stumbled into it, and it just turned out it worked out well. But that was really the platform that got me noticed. I never expected to be anything, for anybody to know my name. It's a strange name, I know that, but I didn't expect anyone to know my name. And somehow I just became, at least in a small community, a minor celebrity. And I don't even know how that happened, especially since it's mostly just me sitting behind a keyboard, really on my phone. I do all my blogging on my phone. Um, and suddenly I became a bit of a minor celebrity. I just kept doing it. And if someone asked me to do something, I don't say no. So if they asked me to speak somewhere, I said, okay. If they asked me to do this, I usually say yes. It's just very hard for me to say no because they went out of the way. If they think I can do something, then for them and I'll help them, then I should do it. So it's rare that I say no. So it just kind of took on a life of its own, and I just kept going with it. And then at some point, I decided that I needed to upgrade my smicha. I had already learned your day, and I got smicha. I had a friend, when I published with a strange name like Gil Student, people will think I'm Jewish. So I felt I needed, if I'm publishing in the newspapers, I need to have the title rabbi. So I asked a friend who was the chief rabbi of Basel, Switzerland at the time, and he knew me well. We had spoken in Yeridea when he was getting his own smicha. We had spoken and learning. So I said, "Can you give me smicha?" And he said, "Okay." So that was really the extent of it. So he gave me a smicha certificate, but I knew it wasn't going to be accepted widely. It just gave me permission to use the title. So at some point, when you reach a level of communal responsibility, you have to change your behavior. And I felt I needed to upgrade my smicha for that reason. And I wanted to join the RCA, and they had their rules of smicha, which is a whole other story. I literally broke the RCA's rules. I mean, I broke their system. Broke this. Great story. Some other time. So I asked Rabbi Genak and Rabbi Herschel Schachter and Rabbi Loza Tice, and they tested me. Rabbi Genak gave me the same test he gives to his YU Smicha students, and Rabbi Schachter just asked me all over Shas. It was really, really hard. Really, really hard. The hardest test of my life. It was all oral. But so I came out with that smichas, and now I can legitimately call myself a rabbi. Um, I don't remember where I was going with this, but somehow I just people like what I had to say with it, and I also, like I said before, I have this business training to think strategically, and I also have some experience with marketing and publicity. And in the rabbinic world, those are skills that are hard to find. So people appreciate that. And so I get calls, to people asking for advice, organizations asking for advice on different things. I'm on various committees and organizations now just to help with some of the strategic thinking and some of this publicity and marketing. And I'm into all of it. I just stumbled into all of it. I don't really know how it happened. I can't even advise anyone else how to get to that. Just do your thing, and if it takes off, good. If not, well, who cares? The ikr is that you should be learning and should have a family, and you should be blessed with the brachos of having children who are Shamei Torah.
So on that note, it's very interesting how you talked about your smicha and you wanted it to be more legitimate. Nowadays, as we know, it's really not hard to get some sort of smicha certificate. It's also even easier to have a platform, whether it's a website, a YouTube channel, a podcast, like we're doing right here. And that poses a challenge for people who believe that there are certain standards of quality that should be upheld within our Torah discourse. And l'chora, I'm thinking out loud here, the only way to combat that within our community to maintain those high levels is to really cultivate a sense of critical thinking among the audience. Because if the audience is shallow thinkers, then anyone can get up and have some sort of smicha and have some sort of platform, and then the entire standards of what constitutes quality Torah content go completely out the window. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree on many levels. First of all, in the community in which I live. So let me tell you one thing. I don't know if you know the name, but some people in YU might know the name Rabbi Avi Sarfati. He and I were from Rusas, and good friends back in the day. And he once told me he lived in Mossi, and he said, he only goes to a shiur when the speaker knows more than he does. Which I don't think he meant it literally. I don't take it literally, but I do take it seriously. That you got to there are limited hours of the day. When are you going to learn if you go to shiurim? Shiurim is learning it. Shiurim is passive learning. I only go to a shiur if there's some gadol b'Torah or someone who's coming from a completely different perspective that I think will change how I think in one way or another. Someone like Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Olav Shalom. I would go to hear him because he's coming from a completely different direction. But even that, not too often, because you got to cover ground. There are limited hours in the day. When are you going to learn? It's like the Gemara says, and Gemara Bracha says, you got to be, you're going to sow and you're going to reap and you're going to harvest. What Torah Matahelecha. Go to this year and that year. Torah Matahelecha. Listen to this podcast and that podcast and read this newspaper and that newspaper. We get 5 from newspapers at every Shabbos in my house. I don't touch them unless my wife says, you should read this article because when am I supposed to do on Shabbos? When am I supposed to learn? I work all week. If I'm reading the newspapers on Shabbos, when am I going to learn? And the same goes to quality control. If every sefer published was quality, it would be much easier to learn from a sefer because whatever sefer you buy is quality. There's no quality control in the book publication, no quality control and like you said in the podcast, and anyone can get online smicha, and some people might deserve it, and online smicha might be the only way to get it because of their life story. Everybody's got a story, but how do you know? So the ikar is people need to learn to be cautious consumers, and their most precious asset is not the money, it's not the 401k, it's your time. You might not. Who knows if you're going to live long enough to touch your of course, your family, your children, your grandchildren. Nothing more precious to me than my grandchildren. But time is more than money. They see time as money. That's not true. Time is more than money. So people need to be. I see, and even people with the greatest smichas around go around saying fluff. In the old days, they used to call it Babasha Torah, which is offensive, I know. But there's so much inspiration. Inspiration is, and sometimes you need inspiration good. But every day, what's wrong? Well, why can't you hold down that inspiration for 2 days, 3 days, and learn some meat and potatoes? So but I'm a cynical, I'm old fashioned, and I'm out of touch. I know that my kids tell me that all the time. But I just don't. I think there's quality control everywhere, and the way I solve that is by being cynical and possibly limiting myself. And I'd rather have which is type 1 error, type 2 error. I think type 1 error is you reject a false positive, you accept a false positive. And type 2 is you reject a false negative. I'd rather have a type 2 error and reject a good Torah than the other and just waste my time on bad Torah.
Right.
So if you want to know what the answer is, Yaakov, I don't know.
Okay, it's a challenge. It's all a challenge. And I appreciate you saying something controversial because I once said that the best way to get the podcast out there is for someone to say something get me in trouble. So maybe now the ratings will go up a little bit.
Can I just take a pause for 1 minute? And I just realized everything I've said so far makes me seem incredibly intense. I happen to be a super laid back guy. Now, if I could tell you a story, one time at AIG, my department, there were layoffs all the time. My department got destroyed, and the remnant of my department was moved to another floor. And I happened to be seated right near the chief reserving actuary of all of AIG. And a few months later, his secretary, his admin came over to me just at the water cooler and said something which I choose to take as a compliment and not an anti-Semitic insult. She said to me, when I first moved to the floor, she was so worried because I look so serious. Everything about me is just serious, and she was worried that I'd drag everything down. But then after a few months, she realizes all she hears from my area of the floor is people laughing. All I do all day is laugh, and the people around me laugh. And that's true. I sound intense, but I do all these intense things in a really laid back way. One of the ways you can be that intense is if you don't really care about stuff. Like I think I made it clear, I don't really care about my career. I don't really care about money. To me, money, the only reason more money would help is if I could retire and learn all day. If I don't have that enough to retire, then what do I need it for? More money, more problems.
And practically, how do you make time for running a website in addition to all the other things that you mentioned?
So we mentioned before, you asked about the smoke and mirrors I'll point you a little bit about how Torah Musings works. Things are usually prepared days in advance, and it takes me only a few minutes to set everything up. The acre of my work is preparing articles, which I do mainly on Shabbos by learning. And then, I write the articles either on Sunday or during my commute to work. I take the subway. So I have a smartphone. I used to have a BlackBerry, and almost everything I write is on my phone. And there are other contributors to Torah Musings. There's Rabbi Gidon Rothstein, there's Joel Rich, there's Rabbi Daniel Mann. We have an editorial board, Rabbi Moshe Shapiro and Rabbi Basil Herring, and they all contribute in their own way. And then, so for me, it really can all be done in a few minutes here and a few minutes there, little snips and bits and pieces, so that I don't have to spend a lot of time, on the website. It's just a little here, a little there. And it doesn't really take up that much time, as long as I have Shabbos on which I can learn and prepare a sugya for an article. So if I have to, I have a Simcha on Shabbos, so I have to go away somewhere and I don't have time to learn. So that week, the website will suffer. I might have to do a rerun, or I might have to figure something else out. But in general, to emphasize my point is, what we've been discussing is you can have a job, and then you can learn incredibly well. And I know people who do better than I do, and who can really became in Shas and poskim, and they're really very impressive people. And I aspire to be a little bit of what they've accomplished in my short time. Like I said, I'm still trying to catch up to them. But in Yis Hashem, someday I'll be something. And until then, I'm running on the treadmill, just doing everything and taking on more projects and learning more. And you always have to take a step back and reassess what you are doing and how you're doing it, and change your goals if you need to. But you can accomplish a lot, and that's what I hope to do.
I want to pop in for the question for a second. I love learning. I have certain ambitions for learning, but when you have those ambitions, even within learning, which you do care about, so how do you prevent that from becoming intense and keeping it a source of simcha and simcha, which we hope that the Torah contributes to good life and having a life where everyone appreciates Torah, as Chazal talk about in different circumstances. So putting aside the professional, with regards to Torah, how do you balance intensity and joy?
So that's a very personal thing. So you're probably at the age where you might relate to what I'm about to say, but if you're not, unfortunately, you will eventually get there. Life is full of ups and downs, really difficult situations. Nobody's life is just whipped cream. Everybody's got really depressing parts of life. Sometimes you just get depressed and you go through really bad things happen to you. There's a war going on right now. You know what I'm talking about. You know more than I do, because you're in Eretz Yisrael. I'm just sitting here in the comfort of Brooklyn. Life could be tough. And my solace has always been a block Gemara. Whenever I'm depressed, whenever something looks really terrible, Gemara is my way out. That's the solution to my anxiety, solution to my depression. Always been Gemara. It's just a joy in my life. That, and of course, my wife and my kids and my grandchildren, I have to emphasize that. They don't get in trouble. But a block Gemara is where I find the joy in life. And, so how do I keep it from getting intense? I love it too much. And part of it, though, and this is important for everyone to know, Gemara is really hard, really, really hard at first. You need to learn the textual skills. You need to learn Aramaic grammar so that you can read it like you can read a novel. Once you can read a black Gemara like you can read a novel, it's so much easier. You focus on the ideas, the fun part. The hard part is where you crack your teeth. Hopefully you did that in elementary school or high school. But I didn't. I remember at one point when I was in my mid-20s, I hit an inflection point where that Gemara was really hard. And then at some point, I just took off. Pardon the mathematical term. An inflection point is where things suddenly go up really quickly. And it just became so easy for me. I had mastered the skills. And after that, it's just a joy. It's just where I find the joy in life. And if that's, and again, also that helps with the learning. Because if you enjoy it so much, then you're going to find the time. If you like Gemara more than Netflix, you're going to make Gemara the priority. Everybody needs downtime. I'm not saying Netflix is downtime, is the way to spend your downtime, but everybody needs downtime. You need to rest your brain, you need to rest your eyes, you need to walk around and get your limbs moving. But another thing I learned from Rav Gil Cohen, when you're walking from building to building, why aren't you doing a Cheshbon Nefesh? Why are you just looking around and thinking? You should be doing meaningful thinking. When it's a Cheshbon Nefesh or it's Chazara, you could Chazer Gemara. You could, if you do the Zichrun method, which I'm not such a big fan of, but I've tried it. If you do the Zichrun method of learning Gemara, you can Chazer a whole Masechta in maybe 20-minute walk. So, use your time joyfully, enjoy it, but use it meaningfully.
Cool. We segued away a little bit from Torah Musings, but I do want to recognize all of its accomplishments, and it's really made a big impact on a lot of people, and it's a big milestone, 20 years. So can you talk a little bit about where it's at today, as far as how do you view the niche that you are filling in the world of Torah in 2024?
So my goal in life, I've already told you what my goal in life is. My other goal, my next layer goal, and I come from, I was trained in what you might call the right-wing modern Orthodox. It's an American term, right-wing modern Orthodox world. That's where I come from. Let's say Shechler Ravulik Talmud to some degree, although I'm really Rameir Twerky Talmud, but certainly with Shechler Ravulik, that world of right-wing modern Orthodoxy. But I've made my life, I've built my family in the more moderate Haredi community. My boy go to Chafetz Chaim. My daughter went to BJJ. So I see those communities as overlapping tremendously. And I've tried to bring those communities closer together by publishing in both communities and talking about issues that are mutual concern and mutual agreement. And when I write, generally when I publish in the newspaper, in the Haredi community, when I write online, it's more in the modern Orthodox community, and I write the same exact thing. I try to find issues that are of interest to both and quote Talmidei Chachamim from one community to the other, bring them across. And I also quote some Eretz Yisrael Talmidei Chachamim that people don't know about. Gedolim like Rav Yaakov Ariel, who in Israel, everybody knows him. In America, people haven't heard of him. Rav Shlomo Aviner, Rav Eliezer Melamed to some degree, Rav Dov Lior to some degree. I try to bring their names into American halachic conversation. So up to your point, what do I do with Torah Musings? Where is it now? It's sort of examining the issues of morality and halacha that are fully consistent with Haredi values, but are voiced within the questions that are talked about in modern Orthodoxy. So to some degree, it's hashkafa and halacha mixed together, but it's completely traditional, based on the Yehudas and Fasim Sofers and all the classical Rishonim and Achronim. So I think how I'd phrase it this way: I'm talking about the important issues of today, using the classical sources of halacha and hashkafa, and showing how they are extremely relevant today. And when people have questions and they wonder, what does halacha have to, what does Judaism have to say about the problems we're facing today, right now? My answer is just look. They talk about it. It's all relevant. The Moreh Nevuchim is relevant today. It might be medieval philosophy, but it's completely relevant today.
And I think this is a great segue to what I think might be our last question. How do you take that approach and apply it to the issue that this podcast is trying to address? I love the framing of the overlap of the right-wing YU community and the Haredi community, and we are all together in this boat of a society which has some tremendous advantages and some tremendous dangers, Torah learning in quantity that we've never seen before, wealth that we've never seen before, putting that all together in the world of a Balabus, trying to live a life which is financially independent and fulfilling religiously with Talmud Torah at a very high level. So could you try to take that lens that you use to write and build your website and apply it to the issue of B'nai Torah working Bizman Hazeh?
Sure. So I'll say it with two things. First of all, there's a great Chiddush of Rav Mordechai Willig, writing in one of the early issues of all places, the Torah Umana Journal. I think it was in the first or second volume. He said, okay, Torasa Keva Umalachtacha Arai. You should make your Torah study the most important, and your malacha, your work, should be secondary. And he said, you're going to spend most of your day working, not learning. But the way to fulfill this mimer of Chazal is in terms of the importance in your own eyes, that the Torah should be keva as the most important part of your day, and the malacha should be less importance in your day. Now, if you have career aspirations like me, you might take your job more seriously, but that doesn't mean that the Torah shouldn't be the most important part of your day. So that's number one. Number two, you could be a balabas, without being balabatish. Being a balabas means you go to work, but being balabatish means you're very passive in your learning. Even if you are learning, you go to a shir, you go to Daf Yomi shir. That's passive. in order to be not Balabatish, you have to take ownership of your learning, and you have to take control and be active. Teach a daf yomi, or learn be'in, and create deadlines. One of the reasons I have succeeded to some degree that I have is because I have a weekly deadline. Push yourself, like the Mabid says, push yourself with deadlines, with goals, with tests, even take tests, take the Dirshu test. But it's only by being accountable, just like it works. You're accountable for the work product, be accountable for your learning as well. And that way you'll learn much, much better. And you'll have seen much, much more hatzlach. I think the only reason I've seen any success, and I think that's the only reason anyone sees any success, if they take ownership of it. That's what I would say, Yaakov.
Well, do you have any parting thoughts, things that we didn't get to that you want to mention before we close up for today?
Every morning I wake up and I have two regrets that I think of immediately. Number one, I'm living in Chutz La'aretz. Number two, I'm going to a corporate job. I'm not working for Klal Yisrael. I'm not working for Kodesh Baruch Hu. I'm going to a corporate job. Now, that's just the way my life turned out. And I don't know how to change that. But the one thing that I have that I know is that the only thing Kodesh Baruch Hu has in this world is Daled Amos Shel Halacha. And so that's where I try to make my home. And wherever I am, wherever I happen to be, I'm in goals, both physically and also career-wise. But I try to bring the Daled Amos Shel Halacha with me. And that's really all I can do. And I see myself living a b'diavad life. But all you can do is what our ancestors did throughout Europe, throughout all the goals. Is just cling to tradition, cling to Torah, cling to Shas and Poskim, and that's how I try to live my life. And I trust and I hope that my kids see that, and they model their lives likewise. They try to live their lives, life of Torah, dedicated to the Daled Amos Shel Halacha, and raising their own children in the same tradition that we've inherited and we've adopted for 2,000 years. And Emir Hashem, it'll continue for generations and generations after.
Rav Gil, thank you so much for joining us today. I think, in my mind, you are a very successful professional. Successful in the sense of you have your values, you stuck to them, and with a lot of hard work and Siyata D'Shmaya, you've been able to really accomplish a lot of things consistent with those values over the years. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you for all of your insights.
Thank you, Yaakov. I wish you hatzlacha, your family hatzlacha, and all your listeners tremendous hatzlacha in everything they do.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for tuning in to Starting. If you're still listening at this point, that means that you've enjoyed. Please take a moment to give us a 5-star review, make sure that you're subscribed, and share this episode with a few friends. I want to thank our production team, Yoni Schwartz, Yitzhak Schmidman, and Yossi Book. Until next week, keep on steiging, Chevra.